All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Shockwave48, and welcome back to another video. And today we got ourselves a new chapter of My Hero Academia, chapter 404. We are on the verge where Bakugo awakens, and he is about to team up with Deku to stop All For One and Shigaraki, and of course, save All Might. And in this chapter, we get some very interesting pages from this part because obviously I'm very impressed the way Bakugo is improving his power and everything, but the way he is and his stamina is pretty much gotten weakened, so he's pretty much going to do whatever he can to save all. I don't know how he's going to do that because this is also a new chapter for me, but I'm looking forward to see how this battle is going to end because we really need those two out of the picture because All For One Shigaraki has done completely massive destruction on Japan. So yeah, the Deku is gonna have to find some way to stop him. But anyway, let's go and jump right into this new chapter, guys, and see what's going on.
Guys, it's Pineapple, and you know we had to come back for this week's chapter spoilers for My Hero Academia chapter 404. So I want to say thank you to Rukasu, thank you to Dabi's pole dance, thank you to everyone involved in the process, and let's get right into the leaks. We got 15 pages this chapter, and the title of this chapter is We Love You, All Might, because in a very big way, this chapter is going to be focused all around All Might, right? And trying to save him and get him away from All For One, which is right what we see as we begin the chapter, right? As of course, on the first page, we see that the chapter begins with a flashback to Night Eye's cruel death foresight as All For One holds All Might in his arms with one hand around his neck and one hand around his leg, trying to literally separate the two halves of All Might and split him in half. And during this process, we can see blood coming from All Might's wound that I guess he got from the fight previously in the story with All For One, and All Might is screaming in pain, or I guess as much as he possibly can, while Stain's quirk is affecting him, right? Because we did see last chapter that All For One did use Stain's quirk to paralyze All Might. And at the bottom of that page, we see leaves kind of fluttering in the wind over the waves of the ocean, and over this arc of My Hero Academia, we have seen leaves floating in the air at different portions in time, and there's even what seems to be a flash forward with maybe a character who might even be like an older All Might failing to catch a leaf, so it seems like that is something that's going to be brought full circle at the end of this story, but we're not there yet. According to Rukasu, a farmer has already given up, but lots of other people are cheering, and a dog boy named Martin says, "Man, I don't want All Might to die." Meryl, the US weather report lady, shows up again, and her colleague says that her video about the butterfly effect has been posted online. And this double page spread really is just about us seeing the reactions of other people and how this whole situation is kind of moving along and building and building and building towards a certain point, as we see that weather lady sitting at her computer realizing that that clip is going viral, and it's going viral for a reason. It's not completely random that this weather lady is getting this attention, which she said on the news and everything about a butterfly effect, and one small thing being able to enact a big change is what I feel like a lot of people are hoping is going to happen in this situation in real time, and that's kind of Horikoshi in a masterful way, showing us the outlook and the views of other people going on in that world in a way that we can relate to, because of course that's going viral and we understand why. Now, one last thing on this weather lady, we see that she's actually looking at a computer and says that the air current is acting weird, and a narration says the wind blows strong, showing those leaves that have been featured in some chapters once again blowing through the air. And on this beautiful double page spread, we see UA falling out of the sky as Gentle is struggling to hold it up, and it's kind of like this really interesting perspective where we can see Bakugo actually looking down at Deku. So on one page you have Bakugo in the center, and on the other page you have Deku on the center, but it works perfectly as like a long wide double page spread, and we see the moment where Deku and Bakugo make eye contact with each other like they did at the very end of last chapter 403. So on the next page, we have Shigaraki looking really confused as he was making eye contact with Deku this entire time and talking trash to Deku about how you'll never save All Might, like this is not going to work out, you're screwed here, let go of me. And in this moment, it's like he sees Deku enter this zone of focus, right? Like a Kuroko character entering the zone. And in that moment, Shigaraki literally just does not matter, right? Now that Deku has some idea of what he could do here, he locks eyes of Bakugo, and Bakugo kind of darts down from UA at just ridiculous speed, because we know that Bakugo, of course, got a big upgrade before he went down. And what we see on the page is Deku actually doing like a spin in midair while he's holding Shigaraki with one of his hands, and with the other hand, he extends it in the perfect place as Bakugo is going by to try and catch Bakugo's hand. And as Deku catches Bakugo, he starts to spin in the air as fast as he possibly can to build up as much force as possible, and this entire time the both of them are maintaining eye contact, right? It's like they're telling each other their exact plan here in this moment without having to say a word, as Shigaraki is still tied up by Deku's black chain, very confused. But inside of Deku's head, or I guess like around Deku's head, because that's where the vestiges are, we see that the second user's vestige actually starts to warn Deku that using gear shift again is going to exhaust him even more, but Deku uses it on Bakugo anyway, and we have seen that Deku is very exhausted over the course of the last couple chapters where we've seen this fight at all, and that's because Deku used gear shift earlier in the fight, and the backlash by this point is supposed to already have Deku on the ground, so he's really trying hard to fight through all of the exhaustion. But we need to talk about how broken Bakugo is going to be after he gets this boost from Deku, because we know that Deku's gear shift is able to shift the reality of My Hero Academia's world, and Bakugo is incredibly fast, right? So Deku applying this onto Bakugo should just make him absolutely ridiculous, and should at least make Bakugo on par with Deku in this moment. While this is all happening, we see behind Deku the vestige of All Might, which is kind of like that flaming man that we've seen over the course of the entire series, slowly starts fading away like it has been for the last couple chapters, and actually starts to become more human-like, looking like the All Might that we've known and loved over the course of the series, and especially him in his more recent attire, where he wears the black clothes and is his skinny self. And at this moment, Deku, making a really crazy face, maximizes the gear shift on Bakugo and launches him as far as he possibly can, with Bakugo also using his own explosions to try to boost him as much as possible, but Shigaraki isn't buying it. In fact, he's smiling the entire time, saying that Bakugo won't make it in time to save All Might, and he also knows that the All Might vestige inside of One For All has vanished and become the human-like one that we said a little earlier, because of course Shigaraki is able to see the different vestiges just like All For One can. So in Shigaraki's head, he's like, look, we already won this, right? Like, I'm seeing the All Might vestige in front of me, you can't save him. I'm assuming that's how it works, right? Shigaraki suddenly has like this amazing understanding of how the vestiges and all that works. However, something different than what he's expecting happens here. Shigaraki tells Deku the death of the man who brought dreams to this world will bring the real world back. But then the wind gets even stronger and narration begins, talking about all the people who prayed and cheered for All Might. We get all sorts of beautiful moments that have happened all over the course of the series, and it even flashbacks to Nida's words about everyone's wishing energy that changed the future during the Overhaul arc when Deku was able to save Eren. The narration says, just like the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil can bring about a hurricane in Texas, everyone's prayers ... And during this whole process, we see Bakugo racing towards All For One. Explosions just going on all around him as he reaches top speed and sees All For One right in front of him, and Deku with bated breath is looking on as well, with Shigaraki probably looking on also, like, you know, I'm not even gonna bother fighting Deku right now. This is way more interesting to me. And it's at that point where we see those leaves that have been floating over the ocean finally fly past Deku's head and go in front of him, as on this beautiful double spread, all the characters watching the fight are praying as Bakugo flies through the air, and he remembers the guilt that he felt for being the one who ended All Might, but he says not this time. So on the page we see what looks like Bakugo flying through like a giant tunnel of air, but the tunnel of air is actually made up of everyone's hopes and dreams, everyone's reactions to the situation right now, everyone watching the battle and hoping for All Might, or people who've given up.
Dang, it looks like everyone's watching Bakugo.
Hope yet, people who don't even know what's happening in the first place, but don't know how much this affects them. All of them are watching as Bakugo rushes towards All Might and actually blows up All For One's arms, making it there just in time to save his sensei. And at this point, we know that All Might is safe.
I'm impressed with Bakugo. I'm impressed.
That was turning into more of a human-like form actually reverts back to his flaming self, with All Might saying, "Young Bakugo," in shock, and Bakugo bleeding from his nose and mouth shouting, "We'll win this." As Bakugo now has to protect All Might against All For One in what I'm sure is going to be an amazing battle, and who says that Bakugo doesn't have a final villain, because it seems like that's going to be All For One, and Deku can now completely focus on Shigaraki with all of his attention as All For One turns and looks at Bakugo with rage on his face, and his arms start healing again. Now, I think this is a really interesting chapter of My Hero Academia. I liked seeing Bakugo actually being useful. A lot of people over the course of the time that Bakugo was down were asking, like, how is Bakugo going to be useful useful, even if he does get up, right? Like he was already destroyed and all that stuff. But I thought inherently when we saw Edgeshot was going to be healing Bakugo, that of course he would heal him up enough for him to be useful in this final battle. And considering this is a manga and an anime, I'm never really surprised when characters who are literally on their last limb and like completely blown apart and everything get up and have one last moment. What's going to be interesting now is seeing how the fight between Bakugo and All For One is going to go, and like where is he going to bring All Might, right? Because we know that All Might for a little while is paralyzed, and at the very least he's out of his giant combat armor that he was fighting in, so I don't see All Might having another role in this fight as far as like a battle sense. But that means that Bakugo is either going to have to like keep track of him really well, or just overwhelm All For One so much that he has no opportunity to even go looking for All Might. And I figured that Bakugo is actually a really good person to have fight against All For One, because we've seen that All For One to a certain degree is susceptible to AoE attacks, and that's kind of Bakugo's entire kit. And also we know that you're going to have to be really fast to tussle with All For One, period. And that's something that Bakugo has right now, again, because he has Deku's gear shift applied onto him, but also because of the massive boost and quirk awakening that he got last time he was awake. So right now at this point, I'm really expecting us to start finally heading towards the very end of My Hero Academia, with knowing how Horikoshi does fights, us probably being in the last 10 chapters of the series. So we're likely to get another like 2 or 3 breaks at some point before the end of the series, but I honestly think Horikoshi is going to do a decent little push. It doesn't seem like we're on break next week, but I mean, we're here, folks. If you've been wondering like when this series is going to be ending, I mean, it could, maybe it won't end by the end of this year, but if it doesn't, it's going to end at least at some point early on next year. I do think it might go on a little longer because we're going to have some sort of epilogue or something where we see the characters older. I do think that's what that scene of like potentially All Might grabbing the leaf and missing out on it is leading towards, us seeing older All Might, older other characters in their adult forms, seeing where they placed in the top 10 heroes and all that stuff, seeing who ended up with who. I think we're going to see all that stuff by the final chapter of My Hero Academia. However, for now, it seems like this is all we get, with us having to wait another week. So thank you, Horikoshi.
Wow, what an amazing chapter I just seen today. I mean, I'm actually impressed about Ghost's skills. I'm actually excited that he's alive, even though it took him a while to recover, but he's back. Not only that, he actually blew up All For One's hands and saved All Might. And even though All For One's still healing, but still. I don't know how much longer he could last because pretty much he's bleeding. And of course, I don't know if he has what it takes, but I'm pretty sure he's going to do his very best to save All Might, start All For One. That depends on, if Deku could take out Shigaraki, then Deku's going to probably rush in and help Bakugo take down All For One, All For One together. Because I'm pretty much that's probably going to happen probably in the next few chapters that's coming up soon. But unlikely, we're probably not going to see All Might die at this point because they really need All Might alive. And Bakugo's not going to let All Might die unless he gets that card signed. So, yeah, I mean, we're pretty much almost close to the chapter, guys. I mean, I don't know how many chapters we got ahead of us, but I'm pretty sure we're probably gonna have like at least 3 or 2, depending on how many chapters we have. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I can't wait for this battle. I'm so pumped up for this, but yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.